Hey there, and welcome to the Jared Show Wisdom Podcast. In this episode, we are going to take a look at the human condition. We'll ask some deep questions and begin the journey to fundamental answers. Thank you for listening or watching this episode, wherever you may be. Over the past 9 episodes, I have laid some groundwork for what we are about to get into. The human condition and the big questions in life, like, why are we here? Who are we as a species? And who are we as individuals? How did all of this first start? In the first 9 episodes, we went over the meaning of knowledge, wisdom, subjective and objective, the earth, the world, the brain, and the mind, wealth, and most recently, absolute truth. In the first part of this episode, we'll go over these questions and why they are important questions to ask and to seek for answers. In the second part, we'll look at one of the fundamental principles that we as human beings deal with in this 3-dimensional plane of existence, that of duality. The last part, some might call an intro to comparative religion. I prefer to say, in the last part, we'll begin packing for the journey to fundamental answers. Before we get really deep into things here, I'd like to ask this question. Have you ever thought about those big existential questions? Like, who are you? And why are you here? Do these questions make you feel uncomfortable? Or are you curious? We'll be back in just a minute. Welcome back to the Jared Show Wisdom Podcast. Thank you for listening. And so what is your answer to these questions that we heard before the break? The big question, have you ever thought of these things before? Have you ever looked into the existential, philosophical questions in life? When you hear these questions, how does it make you feel? What's your general response? My response to hearing these questions, do you believe in God? Where did we come from? Why are we here? What's our purpose? Where are we headed? My response to those questions is a mix between excitement and curiosity. Excitement because I have asked a lot of those questions already. A lot of those questions. And found a few answers. I suppose you could say it feels like when you study for a test. And as you're taking the test, you see a question worded exactly the same as you see in the textbook or the assigned reading. And you just know that all you have to do is fill in the rest of the sentence. I also get curious because I hear the question from someone else. Why are we here? And how did we get here? Is there a God? These kind of things. And inevitably, the person asking the question their answers won't line up exactly with mine, and I get to hear someone else's point of view and see the world through their perspective. Now, some people get uncomfortable when they hear these questions. What's my purpose on this earth or in this life? Why am I here? Generally, when we don't know the answer to something, we become either nervous because of our ego, or curious because we are humble enough to recognize we don't know everything, and we're humble enough to recognize that it's okay that we don't know everything. I mean, look around. How many people do you know that know everything? There sure are some out there that think they do. And I've been accused of it myself. But it's obvious that I don't know everything. I've just asked a lot of questions and found some answers, that's all. Those that get uncomfortable about these deep questions generally think that there is no answer to them, or that they might never find those answers. To those people, I'd like to say, cheer up, dig deep, and keep going. There are definitive answers to all questions. We just have to find them. I think we've all had these questions, whether it be when we were a little kid. I think we've all had these questions, whether it be when we were a little kid or when we got a minute to ourselves one rainy night, or, as some people put it, during a midlife crisis. When people that finally stop grinding their life away at a job or taking care of their kids, and they finally get to take a look around and ask, was everything I just went through worth it? That's a midlife crisis. They ask a simple question, does my life and what I've done have meaning? Does it have meaning to my friends and family? How about to my coworkers and my company? Or to the world at large? You know, when you're a little kid, things seem hard. Everyone is bigger than you, and you can't do what everyone else seems to do easily. Things like jump high or run fast. Physical things and mental things, like adding or solving problems. Then the older you get, the more things seem to get more complicated. Just when you get some of the physical things down, and some of the adding and problem solving under your belt, here comes the wild, wacky world of love and sexuality. As we have come roaring into our 20s, hormones raging, begging to be set free of our parents, we are thrown into another world of mystery. Whether it be college or getting a job and getting into the quote-unquote real world and trying to figure out how to live on our own, the necessity of education tugs at our existence like we used to at our mom's sleeves when we needed something. Transitioning into our 30s and 40s seems quite different than anything we've ever been used to. Now we are supposed to have it all figured out and teach our little ones what it's all about. This burden of knowledge, sharing and receiving, does something to us, I think. It settles us down. As we move into our 50s and 60s, that's usually when we get that chance to look back and take stock. How have I done things? Have I done things the right way? Are my kids good people? Am I a good person? Have I lived a worthwhile life so far? I think by our 70s and 80s, we have actually made peace with what we've done after coming to the realization that what's done is done. Can't change it now. Why cry over spilled milk, right? Getting up into the 90s and beyond, I think we get ready to go. Life has come and gone. We've done what we can and then some. It's time to go. Show's over. The ride is coming to an end. In every phase of our life, as we begin it, it feels like we are middle schoolers going into high school, and we have to learn to adapt to our new life. For some, maybe even a lot. It's hard because it's not as easy to recognize. There is no graduation from the 20s or 30s or from the 40s to the 60s. Life seems to continue on day by day, week by week, month by month, year by year, decade by decade, as if it might go on forever. Sometimes we get that fateful glimpse that it will not go on forever when we experience the death of a loved one or see some kind of tragedy in our lives. It jolts us or jars us awake, as if we had been sleepwalking through life, and someone reached over and violently shook us. This pattern, this life that I've just laid out, is but a mere example. It's not how everyone lives. It just serves as a representation of some of the phases in life. There are many more painful, many more joyous phases. These are just a way of understanding what we all go through, what we are all part of, the human condition, living through and in the human condition. The human condition is filled with ups and downs, laughter so rich, so full, so deep and ongoing we cry. Pain, so all-encompassing we get engulfed in it. It seems to take over our very existence. Pain so deep it feels like we have been cut to the core of our being, and our very soul has been scarred. Pain so deep, we cry, or we cry out. There are many ups and downs, many seasons in life, where it seems some emotions come more easily than others. A teenager's heart is so open, feels so much joy so easily, and feels hurt just as quickly. An elderly person's memories cause flashes of joy, sorrow, achievement, and longing. Each phase comes with emotions readily at hand. Yet each emotion is always readily at hand. Always. It seems as we as human beings suffer through joy and enjoy through hardship. We have a range of emotions, yet it is so easy to latch onto one and cling to it for dear life. The human condition is the full range of emotion, and recognizing that we will endure and go through all of it. We will feel pain. We will feel and experience joy. At the core of the human condition is this idea that we cannot experience one without the other. To know peace is to have seen war. To feel joy is to have been through pain. Perhaps that is why we cry with laughter and sorrow. In the next section, we'll get a bit deeper into this core idea of positive and negative, good and bad, otherwise known as duality. Before we take a little break, I'd like to pose these questions. What phase are you in your life? Have you accepted it, much like a kid going to a new school? Or have you fought it and decided that you are too cool for school? We'll be back in just a minute. Welcome back to the Jared Show Wisdom Podcast. So did the questions before the break make you uncomfortable? Remember, all it takes is a little knowledge and wisdom. And just like those monsters under the bed or those monsters lurking in the dark, the knowledge that comes with vision dispels all those unfounded, ignorant ideas and fears we may have, much like a kid scared to go to high school. All you got to do is ask more questions. Let's shift from questions to some answers. Before I start getting into duality, I'd like to clarify something, if I may. I am a person that believes and experiences what's called oneness. This may sound new agey or maybe even on the hippie side of life, but what I mean by oneness is very simply the understanding that we are all connected. We are all on this earth and in this world. We are all part of something much bigger than ourselves. Having said that, it's time to get into what we experience and the difference between what we know and what we feel. So, what is duality? I'm not going to read you a definition here. Instead, let's use examples we can see in the world and on the earth. The easiest and most profound is mountains and valleys. It is incomprehensible to have mountain peaks rise without valleys being formed below. We cannot have mountains without valleys. Duality is all around us in the physical plane of existence. We see it everywhere. We see it with male and female. We see it with open and closed, or hot and cold. Even the screen that you are looking at, if you are watching this episode on YouTube, is most likely due in part to duality. That's right. The screen that you are looking at deals with what's called binary code. And that binary code runs all computer systems. And that binary code is comprised of just two numbers, that being 0 and 1. And how about spatial duality? Actually, one of my favorites to think about. Up and down, left and right, forwards and backwards. You know, you really wouldn't be able to move without this duality that we talk about, the division of space to go forwards and backwards. You wouldn't have three-dimensional plane of existence without up and down, left and right, forwards and backwards. But let's get a little deeper. How about the duality of thoughts, ideas, concepts, and perspectives? As we have seen in the previous episode number 9, the one right before this one, we've seen absolute truth. There is such a thing as right and wrong, as we pointed out, and there's such a thing as positive and negative. Positive consequences, negative consequences. Here's where duality really kicks in. Can you have one without the other? Can you have all wrong, no right? Or can you have the opposite? Can you have just right and no wrong? Now, what I mean by this is seemingly a confusing line of questioning, but what I mean by this is, can you know one without the other? Can you, as a human being, know wrong from right without having the opposite to compare it from? Now, think about it this way. If there was no right to compare anything to, how would you grasp the concept of wrong? Much like trying to picture a mountain without a valley, it is hard to imagine life without duality, and how the ultimate dualistic concept and experience, life and death. We experience this every day. Duality is part of our lives. But let me get back to oneness just for a minute. You see, oneness is the feeling of being part of the whole. Much like having the thrilling sensation, or coming to the inevitable conclusion that we are all part of the human race. We are all human beings. We are all in the same club, the human club. Now, granted, there are some that don't really want to be part of this club, but we won't get into that just now. Instead, let's dwell on this sense of oneness just for a minute. That you and me, or you and I, as is probably more grammatically correct, we are both human beings. We both have to eat. We both need water. We both need sleep. Here's one most would rather not admit. We both need to work, to produce or be productive. We absolutely need that. We both need clothing, shelter. We both crave love and affection. We both could probably agree that we would rather laugh till we cry than cry till we laugh. And I'm willing to bet that both of us have done both of those things. We are much more alike, you and I, than we probably will ever know. But it's what we experience that we identify with. You see, as we have seen in the episode called Subjective and Objective, what we experience is that of subjective reality, meaning we are always inside looking out. Our lives are subjective, and the way that we think is subjective, or you could go a step further and call it egotistical, self-preservational, if you will, if that's even a word. Perhaps I just created a word. Self-preservational. We automatically look out for number one as we train ourselves to keep doing so, or we can actually train ourselves to not look out for just ourselves. We can train ourselves to look out for someone else, like our kids or a spouse or our clients, such as bodyguards do. They train themselves to look out after their client, willing to take a bullet for them. Because we experience or know the world to be egocentric or inside looking out, that is why we see things as dualistic. This is me, and then there is everything else. Experiencing this plane of existence within a subjective perspective, we automatically view things as dualistic. Things that happen to me that I don't like are bad. Things that I do like are good. But this is where things go off the rails, because, the mind, through the brain, can be programmed to believe anything. This is how people walk on hot coals or survive against all odds. The brain, through repetition, can program the mind to like or dislike anything. Have you ever eaten foreign cuisine? Foreign to you, that is. Something you wouldn't normally eat. Different than what you would expect to be good. Perhaps liver or cow tongue or some exotic weird thing. How about, have you ever eaten frog legs? In some cultures, frog legs are considered what they call a delicacy. That is to say, very rare but very good. How about the phrase, it's an acquired taste? Have you ever heard that? This is another example of how something you thought was disgusting at first ended up being something that you cannot wait to eat. The same is true with morality, virtue, and values. Get shown something you think is disgusting enough, and you start to soften to it. It's called conditioning, much like physical conditioning, but for your mind and your brain. Dualism is what we experience every day because of our sense of individuality, our sense of separateness. And you know what? That's okay. Just as you are listening to this, and I am saying this right now, right this second, in this moment, we are connected. But it doesn't mean we are the same. This experience of separateness, subjective egocentric perspective. This is okay, as long as there is a balance between this separateness and the whole or oneness. As long as you have that balance between those two things. Lean too far in one direction, and you get what most of us deem as madness or lunacy. Now, the reason we deem it as madness or lunacy is because those people that go too far one way or the other can really no longer express themselves within our realm of existence. There are loopholes and exceptions to everything I am talking about here. Without going into each and every difference, we're really just trying to get the basic idea of the human condition. As we move forward, we will see how each perception and perspective of the world and our existence deals with the human condition in various ways. Before we take the last break in the episode, I'd like to ask, have you ever felt connected to everything all at once? Think back, dig deep, and we'll be right back in just a minute. Alright, welcome back to the Jared Show Wisdom Podcast. The answer to the question before the break: have you ever felt connected to everything all at once? The answer to that is a beautiful thing. One only you can know. As we prepare for a look at various religions, it's important to note why we should do this and why we should be asking ourselves these big questions that lead to searching through old, sometimes newer religions. Why is it worth it? Is the juice worth the squeeze? No matter what phase you find yourself in, it's good to know that what you are doing is meaningful. That your lifestyle, your ideas, your existence has purpose and isn't just random chance. Now, perhaps you already think that life is just random chance. Just a series of random coincidences. And we all got here by extremely unlikely chance occurrences. That's good, as we will be addressing that in the next episode, dealing with science. We as human beings need to find purpose in what a lot of times seems like a hard life to live. Life is not easy at times, and some people go through some very hard times. Some people go through hard times all of their life, and it just never seems to get any better. We need to find the meaning in that suffering, or life can become unbearable. I think we can all relate to this statement at some point in our lives. I know I can. But I tell you what, to find that meaning, that purpose, is to find a sense of joy and even peace. Asking the big questions in life and finding the answers can make things a lot easier. It makes things easier to get over, easier to get through. Life isn't so hard when you are focused on something. Life becomes joyful when you are focused on something, and that something is also focused on you. This is love. Finding the answers of how did I get here is easy. A man and a woman got together and, well, let's skip that part for now. We already know the rest. Finding out how we all got here proves a bit more difficult and requires much more patience, research, time, and effort. But finding answers to the big questions like how we got here, what we are doing here, where we are going, and what we should be doing, brings with it an inner peace, much like a child has. Knowing that they can only do so much, and that soon they will grow up and learn more and get stronger and do more. As we get into comparative religion study in the next several episodes, many episodes, we do so with all of these things in mind. That it's not about comparing something just so we can say we are right or some other religion is wrong. As we saw in the Absolute Truth episode number 9 of this podcast, there is a right and a wrong. There is a right way to do things and a wrong way to do things. The question that this fundamental idea poses is, who decides what's right and wrong? This brings us to another big question. One we will get to soon enough. In this episode, we have seen the human condition. We have dipped into the idea of duality and started a journey into comparative religion in order to resolve or improve the human condition. In the next episode, we will start with a look at science and the worldview that seems to go along with it. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Please be sure to subscribe to this podcast. New episodes every Monday and Wednesday night at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Please be sure to subscribe to this podcast. New episodes every Monday and Wednesday night at 10 p.m. Eastern and 7 p.m. Pacific. I hope that wherever you are, whoever you are, that you are doing well, that you are healthy and well balanced. Thank you for listening. And as always, and in always, may God bless you. Thank you.